All right, this is the Committee on Community Business Development. This is Monday, September 29, 2014. We're at 6 p.m. I have Council Sachetta.
Here.
I have Council Capone.
Here.
I have Council McKinnon.
Here.
And I have Council DeFlorio. Here. We have 4 members present. We do have a quorum.
Clerk, read item number.
If we could please suspend the rules and take items number 6 off the
Second.
agenda.
Motion's made, take item number 6 out of order. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it.
Item number 6. This is to move the bus stop on the corner of Chester and Ferry Street to 174, 176 Ferry Street.
Could we please put this into Government Affairs, Public Safety Government Affairs?
Second.
What was that motion again?
To refer this to the Committee on Government Affairs?
Motion made to refer this to Committee on Government Affairs
Could we also invite the sponsors, please?
and invite the sponsors. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it.
All right.
Clerk, read item number 1.
Item number 1. This is a taxi license ordinance that was introduced by Council Frank Capone.
Excuse me, before we go any further, I've had a note here that Councilor Joe McGonigal was unable to attend due to prior business commitment. Yes,
Mr. Chairman, thank you. This is one of those pieces that our city clerk has put together. We have a handful of ordinances that are under our rules, the council rules, as opposed to freestanding ordinances. And there's a handful of them this evening. I know that there's more that we need to go to, so it's a topic that we don't talk about all the time. It's pretty extensive. I don't know if the members had a chance to read it all, but we've got the Assistant City Solicitor in the audience. If we could please invite him up as well if there's any questions as we go through this.
Second.
motion made to invite City Solicitor Rodriguez up, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it.
One of these days, I'm
Well-
gonna get invited, and you guys are gonna say no.
No, that'll never happen. Through you, through you, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
He's already on the way.
It's pretty extensive, and a lot of it already exists underneath the rule. It's just incorporated in different sections. There were a few sections where things are specified out a little bit more. There's language in various places. I have a question about, because the format, I don't know where the format came from, the language. As I said, our city clerk did a lot of work and pulled them up, and I did a quick read through some of it. But some issues I have a concern about, and I don't know what your legal opinion would be on it. I think that with regards to, it's not a page number, but it's number 8. I think it's the third page in.
What side, Fred?
Oh, this is the taxi one. It's actually like the 5th or 6th in. Oh, you've got it on that one. I've got the full-blown one. I'm sorry. It talks about, well, I'll just talk about the topic. It'll be easier than trying to find it. It sets the minimum age for a driver to get a permit, a taxi cab, at 21. Do you think we're asking for an age discrimination issue there, or do you think that's something that, because you're dealing with the public safety, you're looking for someone who's a seasoned driver, that there might be an exception to that?
I don't think we'd be looking at a discrimination issue. I think 21, I think it's reasonable. I hadn't looked through it through that specific prism.
Okay.
So I actually have it flagged on there as well, but I haven't done the extensive research on whether, we might trigger a discrimination suit. Off the top of my head, I don't think so.
Okay.
That's not my impression from first blush.
And try to better utilize your time. Is there anything in the documentation as you saw it that you flagged that caused you any concern? I guess that might be the first place to start.
Well, actually, I'll just take it from the note I had right above that, in the permit to operate the taxi cab. I have other notes on the other ordinances, but this one was pretty clean. Was just unless the operator obtains a permit from the city council or their designee. I wasn't sure if the mechanism that was intended by the ordinance was designed for every permit operator to come to the city council, or I think that procedure should be better spelled out. just in terms of ease of use, so that we don't, so there's no exposure for something that's ambiguous, or, it's a speed bump that I think we should deal with.
Okay.
Before we pass it.
All right. Okay,
And that could be done by the city clerk or the police department.
okay.
Like other cities have Hackney departments within their police department. We don't currently have a Hackney department, within the police department, but that might be something worth exploring,
Okay.
in terms of how to license these things.
I don't have any other questions regarding legality of any of the individual provisions, so I thank you for that, and yield the floor if any of the.
Councilor McKinnon?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Dave. On this, the age of the age 21, is that going to reflect on any other ordinance that we're currently going to hear tonight, like such as livery or anything like that?
I don't know. Let me take a look.
Because I think they should coincide with one another, to be honest with you, so that there's no question or no doubt.
I don't believe so.
If I may, I don't think that there's any age on the livery one. I didn't
So
see
there-
it.
there's
So
no
that's
age on
something.
that?
Yeah, it's something we probably could talk about.
So
That's
we
good.
we could adopt, through you, Mr. Chairman, we could adopt tonight an age requirement on this, or we could lower it or raise it to the city solicitor?
Is that
You can
okay?
make changes to the ordinance in any way, and so before it goes to its final form, and the clerk can address any questions you have in terms of process. But you can change it, you can make it whatever you want.
Would-
Counselor Capone's question was whether it would trigger an age discrimination issue. I don't think it would.
So if we were to go to 18 for livery and 21 for taxi, there wouldn't be a discrimination
I
factor there?
don't believe so.
Okay. That's your,
It's a discretionary issue on behalf, on the city. I don't, from first blush, and again, I'd have to do a little more research. I hadn't looked at it through that, with that analysis. I'd have to do it, but on first blush, I don't believe so.
okay. And now, the rates, do we have control over any rate issue? So
You have
it's
control
just
of the
that-
rates, yeah.
Okay, so we could lower or raise at any time?
In the ordinance, it would
In
be
the
an
ordinance?
ordinance change.
Okay. And this right now, this is just going to take effect so that we have something on the books right now.
What I
And we
believe.
could change this at a
The
later
clerk and
date.
I had discussed this at length, that, and part of the city council rules, it incorporates a large amount of licensing issues. And I had concerns about that from a legal perspective, because city council rules don't necessarily carry the weight of law the way that an ordinance does. So you're asking someone who's not a member of the city council to be applicable to your rules, instead of, the ordinance, which is a law of general application. So
This is the best way, I
take it
think
out of
this
the
is
rules and
best
put it in
way
the
to go.
ordinance, and I think that this is more
agree.
of a reorganization and kind of making some tweaks that, the clerk has, Clerk Matarazzo has experience with these every day. So I'm sure that he suggested a couple changes that he feels are appropriate and presented to the council for theirs. My job was to take a look at it, make sure, when I read it, does it make sense for execution, and are the provisions legal? I'm certainly not making any policy judgments when it comes to these things.
All right, so say if we do pass this evening and it goes into effect, we still have the option to change it.
Always.
Always,
Yeah, this is
okay.
an ordinance, yeah.
Thank
There
you.
would have to be a corresponding rule change.
Yes.
Within your rules to take it out of the rules, so there wouldn't be any necessary conflict of law issue. Like I said, I don't think city council rules have necessarily the weight of law.
So we're better off going ordinance with. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Florio?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to the rate, when we give people rates, I think we should be very careful with that, because we might give somebody a rate today, and the gas might be $2 a gallon, and then a year later it goes up to $3 a gallon, or $4 a gallon. I mean, we can't put people out of business either. So how do we word it? I understand there is a rate now, but how do we word it? Like, if they want an increase, do they have to come up to us and say, and explain to us the gas has gone up? They're able to do that, am I correct?
Yeah, they'd have to petition for an ordinance change, just like any other resident or business owner would petition for an
Yeah, I'm
ordinance
kind of
change.
skeptical to put a rate inside of an ordinance, because if this ordinance, I know it's already in the rule, but
I mean, that's part of,
If this ordinance stays in effect for 10 years, we're gonna charge the same price?
no, it could always be changed. There's no automatic indexing or anything that's included within the legislation. But the charter provides that, you know, if a citizen, if the city council refused to take action, is there an indexing? There's no indexing for metering rates. Yeah, so they can come up and ask you guys. But there's also a citizen initiative process within the charter that if you guys refuse to take action on raising, you know, taxi cab rates, they can go through that process themselves.
Okay.
And they would come directly to us?
Yeah.
They would come through here, right? Okay.
Come
All
through
right.
here or would go directly to the ballot.
From the chair, I want to say that I was on the license committee when the cab company that's in Everett came to us for an increase, and we allowed it, and it was due to the increase in gas. The one rate that I see in the ordinance is that $7 ride in Everett, and I don't think that that should be, that's not fair to the company and to the driver, because sometimes takes 20 minutes to get from Charlestown to Glendale Square, and 20 minutes for a driver at $7, he's losing money and the cab company's losing money. So I don't feel that that should even be in there. I know that Counselor, at the time, Alderman McGonigal is the one that put it in there, and it was passed. Is there any way we could take that out at this time, or do we have to wait till we make this an ordinance?
You can amend this in committee. That's certainly an option.
If I could too, I didn't realize our city clerk was sitting in the audience. Can we please I'd make a motion, we have our city clerk come up as well.
Yes, a motion made to invite the city clerk, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it.
It means I can't spread out as much as I have.
City clerk,
The city council always has the ability to amend any ordinance, and in this case, a proposed ordinance. You can amend anything at any time, and it'll be, and it's referred to the full city council as amended. So, yeah, you know, while it's being proposed, after it passes, you always have the ability to amend an ordinance.
Councilor DeFlorio.
Is this something that has to be done right away? I mean, can we,
No, in fact, I mean, the more time we spend making sure this is right, I mean, it comes from the fact that the system as it exists now, it just isn't tight enough. It just isn't, you know, on paper, you know, within our ordinances, so it can be enforced correctly, implemented correctly, interpreted correctly as you know, right off the top, I mean, right now it states somewhere around 18 cabs. It's supposed to be a maximum of 18. If you read that section, it's 18 per 2,000. That's somewhere around, what, 320 some odd cabs.
well, we may need to have to amend
So it just needed to be done. It needs to be in our ordinances, and that was the best explanation of not having it in the rules that I've heard so far, is you're asking a company to abide by the rules of the city council when they're not members of the city. We abide by the rules of the city council. So, but that's the reasoning for it. We just needed to tighten it up and be able to answer questions when they're asked of us, because it's in the ordinance.
And just from a charter standpoint, the executive branch is charged with the execution of all ordinances. They don't, the council president is the one in charge of executing and enforcing council rules. So the mayor or his designee through the police department, I don't think the police department can enforce council rules outside of direction from the council president. So we want to take all that stuff that's reserved for executive branch and can be enforced from there. We want to take it out of there and codify it in ordinance, because it's simply just going to be the better way to do it.
Thank you both. Matters before you, ladies and
I
gentlemen.
would, I'm not gonna excuse with the customary thanks, because I believe we have a lot of items where we still need you, so I'm not trying to be rude.
I don't
Stay
deserve the
put,
thanks.
please.
So, but my motion would be to grant further time.
Second.
Motion made to grant further time and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it.
Fred, in case you didn't hear it, we,
Clerk, read item number 2. Yes, we granted further time while you were talking to Fred Capone. Clerk, read item number 2.
All right. Item number 2 is also a ordinance, a junk collector's ordinance, introduced by Council Frank Capone.
Fred Capone,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yet another one that our city clerk has put together for one of the things we need to work on. So thank you again, Mike, for putting this together. Question of legality to our Assistant City Solicitor. One of the paragraphs, I think it's paragraph 4 on the second page, talks about not allowing vehicles that have, I guess, refuse, junk, metal, whatever, on its own private property. Do we have an issue with that?
I don't. I have an issue with the last few words on it that says "in any quantity." I think
Yeah.
that might be ambiguous or a little overly broad and leaves a question of enforcement up. I think, so I think they use, code enforcement uses their best judgment in enforcing the ordinances best of, in any quantity kind of boxes them in a little bit. So just in terms of enforcement.
So if you had a vehicle, I mean, if you had a property that was located in a mixed use, commercial, they could park their vehicle on site?
If you had a commercial vehicle,
Well, commercially zoned.
Commercially
zoned area, or mixed use. Would the vehicle be able to park on private property in that
Yes.
case? Okay, so it's just if it's a purely residential area.
yeah, this flows directly with the parking, kind of, if you view it in the same vein as the residential parking.
Okay.
Overnight. There are certain restrictions that are placed upon this. What we're doing, what the ordinance does is it extends that to these types of vehicles, these licensed vehicles, that are parked, it just removes them from city streets.
And, Mike, if you could just explain why this is here. I know we talked about it. Right now, we have folks that are going through, we've got some very reputable companies that have been in business for a long time, and they do a great job. We have a lot of fly-by-nighters, and we don't know who's out there.
Right.
So if
There
you could
were,
address that for the committee, that'd be
Anybody
great.
who opens a business in the city of Everett has to have a business certificate. Doesn't matter what the business is, you have to register it. So we register these businesses, at least 36 people claiming to be livery in the city of Everett. Our ordinances, no, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of livery. The junk collectors, let me back up. On the junk collectors, state law says that we are to license junk dealers, the big scrap yards, et cetera, and collectors. The city has never, ever, ever licensed collectors for some unknown reason. I was able to speak to a couple of them as I saw them, and they were in favor of it. I mean, to them, they feel like, hey, it gives us credibility, it gives us some standing in the community, makes us part of this. Yeah, so they were in favor. I spoke to two out of, there was a third I wanted to get to, but didn't have a chance to. But we're supposed to be licensing these to junk collectors, and it's anyone, even, not just the ones you call to come to your house. If they're driving around, they look at your trash and they see something and take it, you know, a piece of metal, they're a junk collector, and they need to be licensed in the city of Everett.
This would also apply to individuals pushing carts, rummaging through recycle bins as well. So that was my first read, when I first read this, that's, it's kind of a catch-all, for both the quote junk dealers, or junk collectors, when they come by and for the large pieces, the mattress, the bed frames, the, air conditioners, et cetera, but also the tin cans. So that would apply as well. I had a couple just notes, from my office, with the city council or their designee. I think that needs to be spelled out a little bit more clearly. And in paragraph 3 of section 1, where it comes to the presentment of the license by the person licensed, it allows the city council or their designee to demand a license. I think that's an overreach. I think there's a conflict with the charter when it reserves the execution and the enforcement of ordinances to the executive and to the mayor or their designee. I think that's a legislative overreach. Having a city councilor being able to walk up to somebody and demand to see a license, that's outside of the scope of the legislative power.
Councilor McKinnon?
That touches on my question. So it would be the police that would be enforcing this?
Police and code enforcement,
Police and code enforcement?
which they are now as well. They're doing that now, especially when it comes to the parking of vehicles that we've all seen that the trucks overloaded with junk. We're finding ways under the current ordinances to do that, and enforcing that. We've received that directive.
Is that on
Code
the
enforcement.
current finding salary? Like-
Yep, this would all fall under 1-8,
Okay.
so.
And-
Code enforcement's doing a great job with that, and we've seen a huge reduction in that in the last couple of months.
Now, you mentioned the carriages and stuff like that. They would also have to be licensed?
Yep, I mean, the way that it's written, any vehicle, wagon, or other mode of conveyance. So I consider that, a wagon or,
And how many licenses are gonna be available for this?
It's up to the city council. That'd be up to the city council.
Okay, so we would put the number on it?
Right, you
And
can
we
either
can
limit
cap it.
them or treat them as they come in. Public demand, public need.
Do we do it, I mean, would it be one per population, like we're doing?
Well, you could leave it open and take take each case as it comes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Counselor DeFlorio?
In regards to the, people that come and pick up the bottles with their carts, how would you notify them to come and get a license?
Every individual's, the reason that we publish these things in the newspaper and we take all these efforts to post all these ordinances is that every individual is responsible for knowing the law. Ignorance to the law, and I'm sure my colleague at the bar, Counselor Capone, will tell you ignorance, that's the first thing they teach you in law school, is that ignorance of the law is no defense towards the enforcement of the law.
Right, so I understand that, but the other problem is, when you have, if you catch this person going to someone's barrel, because what's happening is they're leaving the barrels open. Okay, and stuff is going everywhere, and then we're finding people, and people are getting upset, and that literally happened to me one day. I went to drive somebody to school, when I come back, the woman was in my barrel, she left my barrel open and left. So if I hadn't come home that day, I would've got a ticket, okay? So, the fine, we already have the fine established, is that in the?
It's 1-8, yep.
1-8. So it's 25, 50, 100, whatever.
Yep.
Is there something that, but we also have the option that if they keep doing this for 25, 50, or 100, we also have the option to remove the license from them, is that correct?
Yes.
Is there anywhere in here that it says that?
No.
Should we put that in there?
You take the removal of license.
So we can, okay.
From the chair regarding this, I recall at a meeting when I was alderman, the chief of police spoke on this matter. We said, how could we enforce it? And he says, each and every one of these bottle collectors are foreigners. They don't speak the language. They don't have an address. So how are we gonna find a person that has no address, doesn't speak English? How do you find them? I just don't understand how we could do that to these bottle collectors. I really don't.
I don't know if that's a question that's appropriate for me to answer. That's more of a policy decision that's to the council. So
I mean, maybe
wouldn't
it's,
feel comfortable
yes,
expressing an
if I
opinion.
may, maybe it's confiscation of what they have. After so many offenses, you actually take a non-payment of fine, you actually confiscate. I don't know, but that's one way to do it.
It falls in to speak from a public policy standpoint. There's punishment and then there's deterrent.
Right.
So if we're enforcing ordinances in order to punish, that's one public policy path that you can take. But if you're establishing ordinances in order to deter, it might not necessarily be that you can give them a ticket and they pay the ticket every time, but that they know they're gonna get a ticket and they know they're gonna be approached by police, they know they're gonna be approached by code enforcement, that may serve as a deterrent, towards ameliorating the bad behavior that the council determines as bad behavior.
And who is gonna enforce this? Did you say the
So police department and code enforcement.
Code enforcement and police department? They're gonna be out checking these people walking up and down the street?
Code enforcement is out in force every day. That's always been a priority of the administration, is to make sure that code enforcement is out there full in force.
I just think it's a bad situation, but it's okay with me if you guys go ahead with it. Yes, Counselor McKinnon?
So it's police and code enforcement acting together? That's what's gonna be happening?
Yeah, it's,
Either or?
think of it as concurrent jurisdiction.
Okay, because, I mean, I think it's more of a code issue, to be honest with you, at this point, it would be. And the police would be secondary, I would think, on this, because they got other things they gotta be doing here. in the
Well,
city.
it allows, well, one, from just an execution standpoint, it will allow for further collaboration between the code, because a lot of times, looking at scrap deal, and the police chief can talk about this in greater detail. As if you're dealing in secondhand goods, you need to be accountable for those goods. If you're buying from non-licensed junk dealers, I mean, you could put something within your, if you're buying from non-licensed junk collectors, you can put a fine into the junk dealers, the people that are buying all these things, so that you can, you know, get it from the other side, get it from the demand side, not the supply side. So you can do them on that side as well, and the police are always very active in dealing with these individuals, whether they're selling secondhand furniture, cars, phones, scrap metal, et cetera.
The chief has been very, the department itself has been very aggressive on secondhand articles. I get calls all the time. They're really aggressive on it, making sure that all the paperwork's in order and everything else, so,
There
yeah.
might be an amendment for that part of the ordinance.
Yeah,
is
they've done a really good
that
job
they can't
on it.
buy from, if they're not in the city of Everett, or they're collecting goods from the
Right.
city of Everett, they have to have a
If they're not
license.
licensed here or elsewhere.
It's kind of a half-formed
Yeah.
policy.
Any
Thank
other
you, Joe.
questions? Matters before you, gentlemen and ladies?
Yeah, we also need a fee here. I can't believe I didn't do it, taking away the license and a fee. I can't, I'm devastated over that. I can't believe I didn't include those two things.
Totally fired.
I know.
Could we grant further time?
Motion made to grant further time and seconded. All in favor? All opposed? The ayes have it. Clerk, read item number 3.
All right,
On
item number 3, this
the
is a lodging
sponsors from
house. This is a order introduced by Councilor John Heelan, lodging house.
I make a motion to lay this on the table and, have Counselor John Heelan notified that he has to be up here. Maybe didn't know he had to be here.
Motion made to lay it on the table and make sure John Hanlon comes up to the next meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Clerk, read item 4.
And item number 4, this is also an order introduced by Councilor John Heelan. This is for the increase in the second-class motor tail license.
Lay on the table to the next meeting and invite the sponsor.
Motion made to lay it on the table, invite the sponsor, and lay it on the table, right. All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it. Clerk, read item 5.
All right. Item number 5. This is the ordinance, the livery license ordinance, introduced by Councilor Frank Capone.
Mr. Chairman?
Red Capone?
All right, if, through you to our city clerk, again, this was, at one point in time, the taxi and livery were all one item, this two-sided sheet. This is what applies to taxis and livery. So this has its own genesis as well, and Mike, if you would want to address what we're trying to do there.
Well, all HCTV has to do is play back the tape when I started to explain this under the other thing, but, yeah, we have 36 companies with business certificates in the city of Everett claiming to be livery. From as long as I've been here, we've never licensed livery. In fact, in order to pass through the city of Everett as a livery company, you have to get a letter from us that goes to Massport saying we do not license livery. That letter is the same letter that's been used for decades. However, the rules say we license liver, but yet we never have. So I figured it was time. I looked at other communities, and they indeed do license livery. Difference real quickly is, and there is something in here, it says 8 hours. If you call for a ride 8 hours ahead of time, that's livery. If you call immediately, or delivering packages, but if you call immediately and a cab comes, or hail on a street, that's taxi. And that's the difference passenger-wise between the two. And the amount of time you have to call ahead of time varies community to community. But we have at least 36 companies. We don't know who these people are. We have to accept a business certificate from anyone who comes in, because state law requires them to register their business with the city in which they operate their business. It doesn't give them permission to operate, it just registers their business. And like I said, we have 36 of them. We don't know who these folks are. If things go the way they are, I mean, they will be they will be an Everett company carrying passengers, and for public safety and public safety reasons, I think the city of Everett should be licensing them and making sure that the vehicles and the drives and everything else are up to snuff.
If I may as well. Now, Mike, where did, for this one, the particular taxi, these types of ordinance, where are you grabbing the language? Where did you get it from?
Some are surrounding communities, and some are actually out of state if I feel that they say it better. And then from there, I just start playing with it and try to get it to fit Everett, you know, as I know the situation in Everett. So they come from everywhere.
I did have a couple too. Yeah, just in terms of, I just had some notes that I jotted down in my cursory review. I think in livery vehicle, it should be clarified that they're not taxi cabs, and just more clear language that these are not taxi cabs, and just a clear distinguishing between livery vehicles and taxi cabs. What I don't think the ordinance addresses is kind of the modern trend when it comes to livery vehicles. A lot of cities and towns are reviewing these ordinances to reflect some of the advances that have been made in technology and some of the changing culture of livery vehicles, such as, you know, Uber and Lyft and Bridge and these other companies that are kind of redefining what a livery vehicle does and doesn't do. So it would be, I mean, it's just to the clerk, and it would be my advice to, you know, take a look at what other cities and towns are doing to kind of address those, so you get ahead of, so we don't play from behind the ball, as it were, in terms of, you know, how to license these vehicles, and what's the modern trend, and what are people actually, what does the market demand, and what are people in Everett using? I know for a fact, people use Uber in Everett. I've used it. Colleagues have used it. It's just a different way that liveries are kind of advancing their market and changing the way they operate. I had just a technical change in the word development at one point. The other only major issue I had was when it came to the use of quarry information and the suspension or the revocation of a license. Under that section, I think it's section 7(1)(b), where it says, subject to a finding that a person can be suspended or revoked if they are in any jurisdiction convicted or subject to the finding of sufficient facts for a finding of guilty in regard to any felony offense. I just think that language needs to be restructured. Every person has a pending case may be subject to the finding of sufficient facts for a guilty finding. So I think it should be that the sufficient facts for being found guilty were found by the judge and the order was issued. Just so I think that's more definitive. That's something that you'd have to do with a plea or for a quaff. That I just think it needs to be cleaned up. The next issue, that is in any jurisdiction convicted or subject to finding of guilty in regard to any misdemeanor offense, including a litany of offenses. The issue is the things that we can look up as a municipality when it comes to a quarry report. We can ask for a quarry, but the one we'll get back will only include felony offenses for the last 10 years, misdemeanor offenses for the last 5 years, or pending cases that are there. So I think this should just, and that was part of quarry reform that was done. I think that the ordinance should reflect the use of quarry information as was deemed appropriate by the legislature and signed by the governor. The other issue I had was in section 14, 3C1. that it places a number of obligations on the livery driver. Involvement in any motor vehicle accident, whether on or off duty, that resulted in death, bodily injury, or significant property damage. I think that needs to be cleaned up and clarified. That they could be a passenger, could be a no-fault accident, could be in their personal vehicle, it could be, riding a bike, a motorcycle, et cetera. So I just think that needs to be clarified, that, they're operating their work vehicle, just so the people that are reading this have an expectation of how they need to conform their behavior, so that we don't risk any exposure on the city side.
Can I just make a recommendation, sitting up here, can you share that with?
Oh, yeah, we always do.
Sure.
So we can get it updated.
We'll work on an updated ones, and we'll just
Okay.
give it to you guys.
We always do. Yep, yeah, well,
Don't worry, yeah, I'll make the, if that's the committee's wish, that I make the changes and talk with Mike, and we'll present it to you guys again, that's fine.
Absolutely, so
Yeah.
we're not talking about the same.
You don't wanna make these changes?
We start back up there next.
Yeah. You got it.
fine.
Get that before we come to the committee meeting?
The updated.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, just
The
like you
updated
got this
version.
time. I gave everyone a package of
Yes, you
everything.
did.
Everything.
We could come and pick them up if you want
Yeah.
to save money,
I
that's not
think
a
it's
problem.
easier. I think you get it sooner if it goes to the mail.
Okay. So make a motion to grant further time.
Motion made to grant further time and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it.
Motion to adjourn?
thanks.
No, they can stay
Excuse
here till next.
both persons to
I'm just gonna sit here till the
Leave.
next one.
Motion made to adjourn, all in favor? All opposed, the ayes have it.
You're punished.
You can get out of the seat.